بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. Um, a bit about Aristotle's background. You don't need to go about. We'll just look at selected portions. Plato, he Aristotle was a disciple of Plato, but Aristotle is not from Athens. He went to Athens to study with Aristotle. Sorry, Plato. Plato. Let's read just a bit. Plato himself was no polymath. He did not pretend to range which his most famous pupil was to attain. Talking about Aristotle. Rather, his own researches uh, were more or less limited to the areas which we today think of as peculiarly philosophy: metaphysics, theory of knowledge, logic, ethics, critical theory. The academy was primarily a school of philosophy, but then the conception of philosophy was brought to. Not that Plato was blinkered. He encouraged other men's researches into other subjects, and he gathered about him the most talented minds in Greece. Mathematics was certainly studied in academy. I don't think we should think of academy as a school in our sense of the word. It was just. I think it was a gathering around Plato. The academy is Plato and his students. Plato himself, no mathematician, was keenly interested in the methods of mathematics. Probably he's saying this because we don't have much from Plato in terms of mathematics, although he does use mathematics in his dialogues. But we have lost a lot of Plato's work in prose, I believe. So how can we say that he himself was no mathematician? In that sense, Aristotle was no mathematician either. So Plato himself, no mathematician, was keenly interested in methods of mathematics. He set his pupils mathematical problem and he urged them to study the mathematical sciences. It is probable that natural sciences too was studied. We should take the word science with a pinch of salt, because science doesn't mean in ancient philosophy. I mean, when we refer to science, obviously the word just means the knowledge, episteme, or a discipline. But today, what exists as science is something really new. It didn't exist in even Middle Ages, let alone in the ancient world. So that's why we should use science. We should keep that in mind. So that's why I don't like using science in this context. Anyway, it is probable that natural science too was studied. Plato's dialogue Timaeus contains speculation of a scientific nature. It's a dialogue about cosmology, cosmic nature of the universe, and a cosmic dramatist um, guide the young academicians thus. In the gymnasium of the academy, I heard some absurd and extraordinary arguments. They were discussing nature and discussing sorts of animals and kinds of trees, species of vegetable, and then they tried to discover what species pumpkin belongs. Plato was interested in problems of classification, categories, how to categorize things. And those problems had some bearing on Aristotle's later attempts at biological taxonomy. Okay, again, the academy found a place for rhetoric as well. It was a subject that Aristotle first made a name for himself. In 1360, he wrote a dialogue, the Gryllus, on the subject of rhetoric, in which he attacked the views of Isocrates. Isocrates. Isocrates was born in, where did he go? Oh, yeah. 436 BC, 338. He was a Greek rhetorician. He attacked the views of Isocrates, a leading rhetorician, a public educator, and professional pundit. um, so, some years later, Aristotle returned to the fray, defending the ideals of the academy against the more pragmatic notions of Isocrates' school. Isocrates himself replied to Aristotle. Okay. The squabbles with the Isocrates did not imply a rejection of rhetoric itself, which continued to interest Aristotle. Let it be noted that Aristotle was honest and generous enough to praise Isocrates' literary style. Rhetoric and the study of literature are closely connected. Aristotle wrote a historico-critical book on the poets and a collection of Homeric problems. Those studies too may have been undertaken in the academy. They showed Aristotle to be a serious student of philology and of literary criticism, and they doubtless formed part of the preparatory work for the third book of the Rhetoric. Rhetoric is one of the books, or one of the books of Aristotle which has come down to us, which is a treatise on language and style, and for the Poetics. That's another of his books, in which Aristotle elaborated his account of the nature of tragic drama. Rhetoric is also connected with logic, very closely actually. And one of the differences between Aristotelian and non-Aristotelian logic is that non-Aristotelian logic, which is more closely related to language and rhetoric. So even if we look at Islamic tradition, you have, I mean, dominant tradition is Aristotelian, but there are other people like Ibn Taymiyyah, and not just him. He represents a huge school, and among the followers of Ibn Taymiyyah in this respect, you find Suyuti, for Jalaluddin Suyuti, and other generally Muhaddiseen. Even though they critique Aristotle's logic, but they have a different concept of logic, which is more closely related to rhetoric and language. Okay, so rhetoric is also connected with logic. Indeed, one of Aristotle's main claims in the Troilus was that an orator should not excite passions. Uh, so if rhetoric is art of persuasion, so in rhetoric you appeal to passion. Apparently, in logic you appeal to your mind. So the relationship between mind and passion is important in our understanding of rationality. And depending on our concept of rationality, we would have different types of logics. Uh, so rhetoric is also connected with logic. Indeed, one of Aristotle's main claims. Okay, passion by fine art, but rather persuade the reason by fine art. But the question is, what is your conception of reason, and how can you separate reason from passion, and even the most boring abstract reason? And this is one of the line of the criticisms against Aristotelian type of logic, is that behind those abstractions, there lurk passions. There be different types of passion. So you can pretend that you have got rid of passion or abstracted from passion, but might linger on without you knowing them. So that's the criticism from the other side. Plato himself was greatly interested in logic, or dialectic, as it was called. Dialectic is from dialogue, I guess. So our word dialectic, English word dialectic means dialogue, came from Latin through Greek words, which basically mean debate and conversation. Okay, so the academicians indulge in a sort of intellectual gymnastics in which set theses were to be defended and attacked by means of the variety of stylized arguments. That's in dialectic. Aristotle's Topics was the first out of Aristotle Topics. That's one of his books. Was first outlined in his academic years. When academic and academicians here refers to Plato's Academy. The work lists and comments upon various general forms of arguments which the young gymnasts were encouraged to use. The Greek word topos, from which topics come, is one of its uses means something like form of argument. Hence the curious title Topics. Topos. So the actual meaning, or the basic meaning of topos in Greek language is place. That's why from where comes topology. Okay. Hence the curious title topic, the sophistical refutation, an appendix to the topics, catalog the variety of fallacies. That's referred to sophists, because Aristotle and Plato thought they were indulging in various fallacies, some silly and others profound, with the gymnast had to recognize and resolve. Aristotle remained in Athens as a member of Plato's Academy for 20 years, blah blah. He loved Plato. Okay, that's enough, I think. We'll continue from here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلي وسلم على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا مولانا محمد وبارك وسلم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.